The human brain, for all its complexity, is a fool for familiarity. Watch the trees calmly sway back and forth in the gentle breeze. Listen closely and you'll hear the rustle of leaves. Like a dream, you forget that it's all an illusion. But it doesn't matter if the witness is just a dream or a video game. For just a moment, it is your reality. In order to convince you, the art and the sound direction do most of the heavy lifting. Thekla's artists worked to filter out any and all noise, emphasizing form, clarity, and color, all while keeping the island's landmarks and scenery memorable and realistic. 5 years before the game was released, designer Jonathan Blow wrote, "If you build a game where people are supposed to pay attention to details, but the details are wrong or naive or just don't have much thought put into them, then at some level the game just won't work. Your brain knows the difference between a real building and a nonsense building that wouldn't occur in the real world." Thekla worked with 2 different architectural firms in order to get all the little details right. That's why this wooden scaffold is neatly attached to the paving beneath it, or why this archway seems built from multiple stone blocks. It was crucial that players could reasonably be convinced that what they were seeing was real. But the illusion makes itself apparent if you stop and look closely, even for a moment. One of the central paradoxes of The Witness is that its realism is in constant conflict with its artificiality. The care and attention that Thekla gave to the island's design is just as obvious as its limitations. Invisible walls prevent you from setting foot in the water, and dictate which walls you can walk over and which ones you cannot. Your shadow appears to have all 4 limbs, but you can't seem to interact with anything that isn't a puzzle. To play The Witness is to experience continuous cognitive dissonance. You are there and you are not there. You are physical and you are immaterial. Maybe this comparison seems familiar. Back in the agricultural yard, we found a quote from Heisenberg explaining a philosophical duality. Heisenberg speaks of 2 opposing viewpoints. One says that there is an objective world that exists regardless of any observers, while the other holds that the world is entirely subjective. In other words, that subject and object are merely reflections of each other. It's fitting, then, that The Witness explores this relation between material and consciousness in an area built around glass. The glass factory and the sandstone peninsula jutting out beside it are known collectively as the Symmetry Area. This name comes from the symmetrical maze panels you can find there, but the environments have some symmetry of their own. The shape of the glass factory mirrors itself. The colored vases are complemented by the piles of sand at the other end, and the energy cable loops itself into a familiar, symmetrical shape. But the glass factory itself also contrasts with the sandstone peninsula. These beautiful curves could form only after centuries of erosion by water, or through the efforts of talented 3D modelers. The glass factory next to it is the peninsula's man-made counterpart. Built of wood, metal, and glass, the building suggests humankind's dominance of natural material resources. In fact, this sandy region is the likeliest source of all the glass on the island, including the glass of each and every puzzle panel. These twin peninsulas show a materiality that seems fixed and solid, yet gives way to change, born from a will either human or natural. Each reflects the other. In deciding how to discuss reflection using puzzle panels, the witness makes the obvious choice and simply mirrors your line. I'll refer to the line you directly control as the material line, and the line that you indirectly control as the spirit line. You must navigate two mazes simultaneously, one whose walls resist the material line, and the other whose diverging paths you must track in your mind's eye. Then the mazes rotate in and overlap each other, and you realize that the two mazes are simply one maze, and that there is little appreciable difference between physical barriers and mental ones. An aquamarine energy cable guides you across the still water to the Sandstone Peninsula, whose gate first tests your knowledge of the hexagon. The hexagon and the maze walls are mechanically similar. Their placement dictates where your line must pass and where it may not. The maze walls are an obvious physical barrier, while the hexagons are implicit mental barriers. Both are responsible for the final shape of your line. In the next set of puzzles, the material line is cyan and the spirit line is yellow. Each line now has its own set of colored hexagons to follow. Coloring the hexagons restricts our will even further, defining only one of the two starting points as valid. And no matter where we touch, the material line is always cyan, and the spirit line is always yellow. We've seen these colors used together before. Recall that the black and white dot puzzle panels used a cyan line to divide the dots into homogeneous segments, and you discovered the hexagon puzzle solutions with a yellow line. You used the cyan line proactively to divide the material of the panel, but the yellow line is a reaction, finding and following the path laid out by the hexagons. Here on the Sandstone Peninsula, those colors symbolize similar themes. As we view the glass factory across the still water, the spirit line begins to fade out of sight until it disappears entirely. The cyan line remains visible, but the yellow line can only be seen in your mind's eye, reflecting your perceptions, visible and invisible.
Formerly, you appeared to me, O Lord, as invisible by every creature because you are a hidden, infinite God. Infinity, however, is incomprehensible by every means of comprehending. Later, you appeared to me as visible by all. For a thing exists only as you see it, and it would not actually exist unless it saw you. For your vision confers being, since your vision is your essence. Thus, my God, you are equally invisible and visible. As you are invisible, as the creature is, which exists only insofar as the creature sees you, you are visible. You, therefore, my invisible God, are seen by all, and in all sight you are seen by everyone who sees. You who are invisible, who are both absolute from everything visible and infinitely super-exalted, are seen in every visible thing and in every act of vision. Therefore, I must leap across this wall of invisible vision to where you are to be found. But this wall is both everything and nothing. For you, who confront as if you were both all things and nothing at all, dwell inside that high wall which no natural ability can scale by its own power. Nicholas of Cusa, 1453.
Thekla has been building towards this puzzle sequence since the first maze puzzles in the glass factory. These puzzles are about two lines. One you can touch, and one you cannot, but both perfectly symmetrical. Cusa speaks of a God who can be seen in all things, but who is definitively separated from us, himself invisible. In the same way, the material world makes an impression on our mind, but we can no easier touch that mental picture than scale that high wall. Though the spirit line fades out of sight, that doesn't mean it's not there. The final puzzles play with spatial design to provide one last thematic underscore. Early screenshots from the Witness's development blog show that this distinctive design has persisted across art and architectural changes. You power the laser by completing the cyan line panels, but their solutions can only be found by first solving their mirrored yellow line counterparts, whose shapes are themselves defined by hexagons. The design of the space forces you to hold the yellow shape in your mind's eye when you turn around to inscribe its mirror image on the cyan panel. Your mental image matches your physical experience. The object and its reflection are one and the same.
One nature, perfect and pervading, circulates in all natures. One reality, all-comprehensive, contains within itself all realities. The one moon reflects itself wherever there is a sheet of water, and all the moons in the waters are embraced within the one moon. The absolute of all the Buddhas enters into my own being, and my own being is found in union with theirs. The inner light is beyond praise and blame. Like space, it knows no boundaries. Yet it is even here, within us, ever retaining its serenity and fullness. It is only when you hunt for it that you lose it. You cannot take hold of it, but equally you cannot get rid of it. And while you can do neither, it goes on, its own way. You remain silent, and it speaks. You speak, and it is done. The great gate of charity is wide open, with no obstacles before it. Yangcha Tashi, circa 700.
The symmetry area uses a mirrored line and subtly symmetrical world design to try and teach the player that the material world and their perception of that world are one and the same thing, a philosophical concept also known as non-dualism. The still water, like a huge reflective sheet of glass, could represent the high wall that Kuza spoke of, or the tension between mysticism and science that Heisenberg described. Its reflection of the material world is an illusion that disappears the moment we try to reach it. What we should also understand is that this island is itself an illusion, an implanted dream or a video game. The Witness's ability to convince you of its reality depends on fleeting moments of immersion, and the player must be convinced if the developers hope to teach the player any of these heady philosophical concepts. But Thekla's commitment to this design ethic runs deep. There's an optional branch of puzzles, too, whose optionality permits them to be simple. They're a more literal interpretation of Yangcha Tashi's quote. All that they ask you to do is recognize the unity of reflection and reality. These puzzles, like the ones inside the glass factory, use the color aquamarine to represent this harmony. This choice isn't a coincidence. Aquamarine is simply a combination of cyan and yellow. This is the first of our lessons that the Witness deems important enough for a reward. This first laser happens to be unique from the others. All other lasers on the island oscillate between cyan and another color with varying timing and intensity, but the laser from the symmetry area remains cyan. Colors are a critical symbol in the Witness. Next time, we'll talk about why.